Hello and welcome back to another video. Red Dead Redemption came out yesterday, so we're going to do a proposed minimum requirement. Before you buy, is your PC be able to run with the proposed minimum requirement, which is the i5 4670 or the AMD FX 9590. 8GB of memory, the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960, 2GB or 4GB, we don't know, and the AMD Radeon R7 360, 4GB or 2GB, we don't know also. And this game is quite small, only 12GB of space required. Welcome to Response PC, I'm Dunk, let's game on. Quick disclaimer, I'm playing on a brand new installation of Windows without any junkware or malware or whateverware anywhere on the computer. Every update done, driver up to date, and the game install. The dev didn't specify resolution and settings, so we're going to assume it's 1080p at low settings to reach a target of 30 FPS. This kind of a storytelling linear game is highly playable at 30 FPS. Only my opinion, don't crucify me in the comments. So we're going to do our test with the i5 4670, obviously, 8GB, 2 times 4GB, and the GTX 960 4GB variant, because I don't have the 2GB variant. But you will see it doesn't matter really. I'm obviously at 1080p and low settings. And that will give us an average of 98 FPS. So this is highly playable. The GPU is pegged at 99% most of the time, sometimes going a little bit down in the mid 90s. The CPU is in the mid 70% of utilization. We're using 5.2GB of system memory, so we're still quite far from the 8GB recommended. And the best part, my GTX 960 4GB variant is only using 1.5GB of VRAM, meaning we can probably step up to medium or maybe even high settings to play this game. That also means the GTX 960 that the dev list on the Steam page is probably the GTX 960 2GB variant. At least we debunk that part. For the CPU, it seems to be quite legit. It's running a bit high also to my taste, but we don't seem to be bottlenecked by it. Same go for the memory, the system memory. At 5.2, we're still far from a 8GB minimum. Now the same system, but with the AMD side, the R7 360, which I don't have, so I'm going to go with the closest thing I have is the R7 370. It's about 18 to 20% more performance, but it should give us a good idea of the performance. Still at 1080p and low settings, this time we get an average of 67 FPS. We have quite a drop from going to that GPU and probably going to be a bit lower with the R7 360. And it is highly playable as we are over 60 FPS, sometimes even reaching the 80 FPS. The GPU usage is pegged at 100% and we're using again 1.5GB of VRAM, meaning is probably the 2GB variant again of this card. Should be enough. CPU and system memory didn't change at all. Now for the AMD CPU, I don't have the FX 9590 and I'm not going to buy it either because even in used market this CPU is $200. But I decided to give it a go on the lowest AMD CPU I have, the Phenom II X6 1045T. This CPU is a 6-core 6-thread compared to the FX 9590, which is a 8-core 8-thread, but it's still 2 more core than the i5 4670, which is a 4-core 4-thread. So I said to myself, why not give it a go then? So here it is, the Phenom II X6 1045T, 8GB of memory, and the R7 370 at 1080p low settings. It gives us an average of 44 FPS, way lower even if we have more core. And even if I can get the report of MSI Afterburner, I can tell you it's the CPU who's currently bottlenecking. Even if the GPU is at 99-98% of utilization, again still using only 1.5GB of VRAM, the CPU is the bottleneck. Mind you, it's still playable because we are above 30 FPS. Also keep in mind, I only been to the small city of Armadillo. That means the FX 9590 will definitely play the game easily. Maybe that's what we're going to reach, 60 FPS. And maybe that was the target of the dev. Maybe it's a 1080p, low settings, 60 FPS. Then I say they quite achieve the goal. But I'm still going to do a real minimum requirement with Red Dead Redemption. But that's all for the proposed minimum requirement for Red Dead Redemption. See you in the next one, and subscribe.